I'd like to call to order this regular council meeting of the town of Saugeen Shores. And the first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest. And again, I'll remind you of your responsibility to do so now or when it arises on the agenda. Nothing then. The next item on the agenda is adoption of minutes, council minutes of November the 10th, 2014 and December the 1st, 2014. And it's been moved by Councillor Mike Myatt and seconded by Councillor Madison that the council adopt the minutes of the council meetings of November the 10th, 2014 and December the 1st, 2014 as presented. Any discussion, comments? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next is the Committee of the Whole minutes of November the 10th and December the 8th. And it's been moved by Councillor Grace and seconded by Councillor Myatt that council note and file the Committee of the Whole minutes of November the 10th, 2014 and December the 8th, 2014. Any questions or comments to the minutes or the motion? All in favor then? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item in the agenda is a report of the Committee of the Whole, and it's the Planning and Development report from November the 10th. And it's been moved by Councillor Madison and seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt. The Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores adopts the Planning and Development report dated November the 10th, 2014, recommending that Council pass a bylaw at a future meeting to authorize a site plan agreement with Grey Bruce Health Services for an expansion to the existing hospital on High Street and for the expansion of the parking lot on Grey Street once all the conditions have been met. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just curious to know if there's any update, because we were doing something here that would set the wheels in motion for something in the future. Are we any closer to conditions being met and having the bylaw before us? Just an update if it's available.
Through Mr. Mayor, I believe we received the final package about 4 o'clock today, so I expect something on your next council meeting.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Larry perhaps could provide me some clarification on this. Having come to regular council, the motion reads that we're going to pass a bylaw at a future meeting, but we have no bylaw. We'll review a bylaw at a future meeting, which we will then have the option whether to pass or not. Yes, so we're not giving it's a strange motion to me because it doesn't actually do anything other than commit to doing something, to commit to a review in the future. It doesn't actually commit to a review; it commits to pass. It's a bylaw. It's a motion the likes of which I'm not too familiar with. Maybe you could just clarify.
I think what we're trying to do is bridge the gap because we didn't receive the package that we were anticipating, and we're also straddling 2 council terms. And I believe probably that word "pass" could have been consider a bylaw at a future meeting, which would then give council the discretion it's looking for.
Mr. Mayor, is it possible to amend the motion to read "consider" rather than "pass"? I don't like the statement that we're going to pass the bylaw. I'd move the amendment, Mr. Mayor, to. I have the motion here. I just say that didn't even read it. You trusted me.
To this motion before us, and the amendment has been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, second by Councillor Rich, that the resolution be amended to remove the word "pass" and put the word "consider" in its place. Questions or comments to this? And I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed, if any. That's carried. So back to the main motion now, then, as amended. Any questions or comments? If not, then all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is report of municipal officers and committees, and we have a motion here, the staff report on council meeting dates. I think there's a report with it, I believe. But I'll read the motion. If anybody's got any questions, we'll take the questions. And it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and seconded by Councillor Rich that council approves. Ooh. Just that there. I've got one out of order here. I was mixing them up here. Just hang on, I'll find it. It's probably my fault. Funding agreement. I may have. No, I don't. We'll get it just in a second. So meeting dates, and it's been moved by Councillor Rich, seconded by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, that the February 23rd and December 28th Council and Committee of the Whole meetings in 2015 be cancelled, that a budget meeting be scheduled for January 13th, 2015, commencing at 9 a.m. Okay. Any questions or comments to that? Vice Deputy Huber.
I am just curious. I'm personally not planning to attend the Ontario Good Roads Conference. Do we have a sense of how many from our council are either have already registered or are intending to go? I'm just curious. If
1, 2, 3,
and you
4. No, I'm not going. I'm going to a different conference.
Thank you.
Okay. So, any other questions? All in favor? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is there's a staff report again with it, and it has to do with insurance renewal, and I'll read the motion and we'll take questions. And it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and seconded by Councillor Rich that Council approve the municipal insurance program proposal from Jardine Lloyd Thompson Canada Limited at a premium of $241,172, including applicable taxes, for the provision of general municipal insurance for a 1-year term ending January the 1st, 2016. Any questions or comments? Councillor Grace.
Yes, on page 6. There's a clause in red that's talking about environmental impairment liability, and it says that there's no cover for above ground storage tanks as the causality application indicates that they're single walled and do not have secondary containment. So I just wondered what above-ground storage tanks? Fuel tanks? So how,
Through you, Your Worship, I'm not 100% sure, but I did just ask my coworkers here, and they tell me that's at the airport. It would be a fuel tank at the airport.
okay. So what kind of coverage do we have then for that? If something happened?
We don't have any environmental liability coverage, but I would assume we have other coverage.
Okay.
Okay. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Grace raises a good point. I would believe we also have above-ground storage tanks at the harbor. The gas tank is, really?
I would point out they discussed that it has to be single-walled, whereas our harbor tanks may have a different variable there.
Any further comments? Just one, I really admire that there's a group of municipalities getting together to try and get some better purchasing policies when we pool our resources, and I hope that really succeeds going forward, because this is one of the fields that there is very little competition in municipal liability insurance. About one or two companies which you're going to get policies of this size, so I hope I'm sure it's a lot of work coordinating all that, but I admire you for the efforts. Any further questions or comments then? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item on the agenda is the Striking Committee report of December the 2nd, 2014, and it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and seconded by Councillor Riss. The Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores approves the Striking Committee report dated December the 12th, 2014, recommending that Council advertise for members of the public to serve on the following boards and committees: Accessibility Advisory Committee, Airport Committee, Emergency Management Program Committee, Municipal Heritage Committee, Planning Advisory Committee, which includes Committee of Adjustments and Property Standards, West Ontario. 2, that appointments to the Downtown Revitalization Advisory Committee and the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee be deferred until further discussions take place at a visiting session with Council. 3, that the Physician Recruitment and Retention Advisory Committee be eliminated. And 4, that Council members be appointed to the various boards and committees at the January 12th, 2015 Council meeting. Questions or comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, the report also includes an indication of a number of committees that weren't specifically mentioned, committees or boards that weren't specifically mentioned in your comments. And the implied item in here for the Striking Committee is that there will be a survey of sorts with members of Council to see which areas they're interested in. Just as a comment about the holding off on advertising or communicating and appointing to the Downtown Revitalization Advisory Committee and the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee, the intent there is that there's probably opportunities for some tweaking and creativity, perhaps in the mandates or the memberships of those committees, and it was felt that perhaps they would benefit from a further discussion. So the visioning session that's represented there has, just for information, been picked up with the motion that we've passed at Committee of Whole, which would lead to some strategic planning type sessions later on. So that's when that discussion was considered to fit into the mix. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of comments, and I also have a motion to amend, which I will put at the end. The comments I would like is I support the Striking Committee recommendation, obviously, and the intention here, and I just want it to be very clear from my perspective, is that we get all of these boards and committees that are statutory in nature, that we don't control, boards that exist that are waiting for our appointments, get them done in short order so that we can keep the business of the municipality going forward, and then to defer these committees like downtown revitalization, like parks and trails, which we have flexibility over, and which we know there is some discussion about whether the mandates need updating, whether how they look and what they ought to be doing ought to be reconsidered, and give those to council to have a kick at the strategic planning session. So I think that this is I very much agree that this is the right way to go forward with this, and I'm hopeful that council will support it. I want to make one comment with regard to the Planning Advisory Committee. I have made some comments over the last number of months. It also made the point at Striking Committee with regard to the Planning Advisory Committee that I would like to see council over time take on a stronger role in planning advisory, particularly in the areas of official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments, as well as the reviews of those documents. My own impression was that there was good support for looking at that among my colleagues in the Striking Committee. But the thought was, and I don't speak for the committee, so I won't speak for the committee, but from my own perspective, was that we didn't want to go that route at this stage because we felt that council, it would be unnecessary. It would be not a good idea to burden council with that right off at this moment with those new responsibilities. But I am eager to revisit that conversation in 2016 when we go to reappoint these committees, and I want to make that statement to council and let council know that it's an issue that I have not dropped and hope to revisit in 2 years' time, and will raise again with my colleagues on the Striking Committee and with you as well. And the final item, Mr. Mayor, is a notice or a resolution to amend, which is before you now, and I will speak to it once you've read it into the record.
Thank you, Luke. I will do that just shortly, but I will just for a point of to clarify. The last term we decided to appoint these committees for 2-year terms. So we will re-advertise and reappoint in 2 years. Prior to that, we had done it for the term of council, but we thought it was an opportunity to re-look at those committees in 2 years and see if there's an opportunity to change membership or modify. Okay. I'll go here first. Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just as a follow-up to the line that says that the Physician Recruitment and Retention Advisory Committee be eliminated, the intent there is that we have another committee that we participate in that pretty much replicates all of that activity. So it's not like we're stepping away from physician recruitment and retention. It's just we're already involved in the same way with another committee, which will have reappointments made to it. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify also that if you're looking at the list that is about to be advertised with the local media sources, that we're advertising. It would appear to me around 6 committees that we're looking for volunteers for, and just not to be the committee to be misled. We have, I think, in fact, where we have a total of 20 committees or close to 20 committees where. It's a combination of community volunteers being appointed to, plus, of course, our council representation on a lot of the boards and committees. So it's not just the 6, but just a shout out to the community. A little plug for when that advertisement's placed with our local media. It's volunteering with with committees or of any kind in the community is a very rewarding experience, and I'd highly recommend that. The community gives it some thought when they see the committees advertised to, put their name forward, because it can be a very, very rewarding experience to be involved with one of our committees. So hopefully we'll see lots of new names brought forth this term. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rich.
Just with regard to the Physician Recruitment Committee, who is our representative for Saugeen Shores for the Bruce Power Committee?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have 1 councillor, 1 doctor, and the CAO.
Oh, okay. Who's the councillor that was on it before?
Councillor Legault.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Councillor, or sorry, Deputy Mayor, Vice Deputy Mayor, you're.
Soon I'll have your job too. Just as a point of information too, number 4 on the list says that council members be appointed at the January the 12th meeting. It's very obvious that members of the public are not specifically mentioned there, because we did have discussion that, recognizing the time of the year, that the encouragement was there to do some promotion now, but also perhaps some advertising early in January because of the Christmas situation, so that then appointments from members of the public may be at the next meeting after January the 12th. So just because it does seem like a very tight frame for advertising there for us to hit the January the 12th meeting for members of the public. So certainly they're not necessarily included in that. It will likely be the meeting after. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions, and I have a motion to amend the original motion, and it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and seconded by Councillor Rich. Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to include the following. It's numbered 5, that an ad hoc committee comprised of 3 members of council and supported by appropriate members of staff, as appointed by the CAO, be appointed and directed to make recommendations to council regarding the future of aquatic facilities in the town of Saugeen Shores. That this committee be directed as part of its deliberations to review and consider the content of the following studies: the Next Wave Aquatic Facility Community Feedback Study, the Next Wave Indoor Aquatic Facility Consultation Process, Phase 2, Final Report 2009, the Next Wave Pool Study Phase 3, 2010, Swimming Pool Conditions Report, November 11, 2011, and that this committee be directed to report on any costs likely to be associated with its recommendation and further recommend a plan for financing of all of those costs, and that this committee be directed to provide a final report no later than August 1st, 2015, and to dissolve thereafter. Questions or comments to the amendment? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
I find it difficult to support the amendment has an inclusion with this, because it's a very big amendment and sets out a lot of information that we're just seeing it and hearing about it for the first time. It's good that you read it, but I don't have that document right in front of me, so I find it hard to include it in this motion, because I believe that it should be a standalone item worthy of discussion and of merit on its own, not as part of this. And it's not a minor amendment to the motion; it's a major amendment, and I don't agree that it should be included in this particular motion. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was something that I raised at the striking committee, and with the consensus, from my perspective of the committee, was that it would be best to raise the issue here at this meeting as part of this discussion, and so I have. And the intention, it would be ideal maybe to proceed more slowly on establishing a committee, but in this particular circumstance, under this particular situation, it's my view that it's necessary and proper for council to move more quickly to begin to organize itself to make a decision on this particular issue. The motion suggests a committee of 3 members of council supported by staff. This would effectively place the decision and recommendations of the committee in the hands of members of council, and members of council would then be able to move forward, hopefully after the first meeting in January, to begin this work, so that we could have a recommendation by the end of the summer in this year. We have seen, as part of our capital budget, the pressing issue at the Centennial Pool, the likely or the potential problems that we may have, and the clock is ticking on those issues. And I see no reason why Council cannot move with speed to begin to organize itself to begin to address this issue, and so that's why I have raised the motion, and not deferred it out to a strategic visioning session or something later in the year, which would sort of be the next opportunity, really, for us to talk about committees. So I'm confident, Mr. Mayor, that that in fact we could make a decision this evening on this, move it forward, and that would work out well, and we could begin to address this this outstanding issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mike Myatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be supporting this motion. I think we've talked around this issue for a very long time, and I think it's very appropriate that we bring it forward sooner than later. And I'd like to actually, Deputy Mayor Charbonneau, speed the process up. You said on or before August 1st, which I'm pleased to see you're saying August 1st. I think if it can be done quicker than that, I think that would be all the better. I think also, whether it's an appropriate time or not, if this motion is approved this evening, that we've got a very, very capable person with our pool supervisor, Shanna Reid, who's been through projects of this nature, along with our Director of Community Services. And I think a lot of good work can be done over the next 3 to 6 months to bring something back to Council. So I'll be supporting the motion. I think this is, I think it's long overdue to get it to the next step. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I as well will be supporting the amendment. I think that it's imperative. If we wait until January 12th before we bring it up, then it'll be pushed back to the end of January at the very earliest, which means that a committee won't be set up until February, which means that no real work will begin until May, or April anyway. So I think that we have to do this now, and this is great to get the process moving forward.
Any other comments? Vice Deputy Mayor Huber.
As a point of order, did we receive a copy of this?
I have it.
Okay, so we're being asked to vote on something that hasn't been read to us, that effectively is setting up a committee, and the mandate is buried in there, and there's very specific direction about the outcomes that are expected, and we really have had absolutely no opportunity to consider what it says. And I find this very, and the Deputy Mayor is correct, it was discussed at the striking committee meeting, and yes, there were comments about a number of potential ad hoc committees in the future, and it was addressed that, you know, this is one that perhaps was worthy of attention. I really didn't expect us, though, to have it come to us in this format, that it's being included in this with absolutely no notice to Council. I really am not comfortable at all with the process. Thank you.
Councillor Mike Myatt. Dave Myatt, sorry. I knew I'd get it mixed.
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Mayor.
It'll take some practice, Dave.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Not having the motion in front of me, just a point of clarification. Are you proposing that this ad hoc committee would be struck in the same manner as the other ad hoc committees that are included in here, and that there would be a call along with the other calls for members of the public to apply for and be appointed to this committee?
I believe the procedural bylaw says that the mover will be a part of the committee, and then we would strike the other, I guess, two council members. 2 council members
along with members from the public.
It doesn't say anything about members from the public. The motion, I'll read the motion again if you want clarification.
I would.
Be it resolved that the resolution be amended to conclude the following: that an ad hoc committee comprised of 3 members of council and supported by appropriate staff members of staff, as appointed by the CEO, be appointed and directed to make recommendations to council regarding the future of aquatic facilities in the town of Saugeen Shores. That this committee be directed as part of its deliberations to review and consider the content of the following studies, and there's 4 of them. Do you want me to read all 4 of them? There were 4 studies that we did in the past. And that this committee be directed to report on any costs likely to be associated with its recommendations and further recommend a plan for financing all of those costs, and that this committee be directed to provide a final report no later than August 1st, 2015, and be dissolved thereafter.
The outcome then would be to provide a plan for financing those costs, almost as if it's been predisposed that there would be a financing requirement. Should it not read that, and I may be in a position to propose a friendly amendment, that the committee would report on financial implications of moving forward with such a project, as opposed to predisposing that there are going to be costs incurred? Because I don't think the decision has been made that there's going to be a aquatic facility other than the one we have just yet.
Go ahead, Larry.
I believe that the director provided council a range of 12 options. Even if we wound up aquatics and closed the facility, there are costs involved in that. So there are costs no matter which option council chooses.
Councillor Grace.
Would it be, I know it would be a slight delay. Is it possible for us to get photocopies of the amendment right now? So how long would that take? So we can have it in front of us? And the other comment that I would have is I do support the idea of moving forward with such a committee, but I really would like to see the opportunity at some point for members of the public to be brought into the process.
So we have a range of ideas here. I'm going to comment, and I know we discussed this, and here's a perfect example in my mind where we're going to set up a committee and take some accountability away from the people that are sitting around this table. You're going to set up a committee of 3 to come back with a recommendation that most of us will not have participated in coming up with those recommendations. My suggestion, and I will vote against this motion, was we go to staff and committee of the whole deal with this as the body. All of us got here by the same way, and we've been asked for accountability. We should, all of us, share that accountability and not give it off to some other body or smaller body. So I think there's a way forward here, and I know it's a pressing issue, and it was an issue, and I think we need to deal with it, but I think, in fairness to all community, this is potentially a very big issue in the community, and I think each and every one of you should have an opportunity to speak to it at all stages. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the comments, and it's unfortunate there wasn't an opportunity to circulate this as a notice of motion, but that would have delayed the implementation well into the year, which is what I was hoping to avoid. So it's, I appreciate and apologize for the fact that you aren't looking at the motion before you now. I think the intention here is to. The mayor makes a good comment, and one that I would generally agree with. But it is a process which we have tried many times, and which has stalled many times in the past. Going to staff asking for reports, the reports have been shelved, and then nothing has come of it. I think we have gone to that well many times. We've asked a great deal of our staff, and they have generated a great number of reports. And I think that the time for that is past. This council needs to organize itself in a manner in which it can make a decision on this. And that's really all that this is attempting to do, is to create a committee of a minority of members of council that can make a recommendation to which all members of council will be able to speak, to which there will be an opportunity for all members of council to say yay or nay. But we need somebody to generate that recommendation, and I think we've asked the staff enough times to make recommendations. They've given us 4 or 5 different options, and every time we have sort of just deferred and not addressed it. So I would like to see council organize itself to address the issue. And this is a suggestion, my suggestion, and of course council will decide whether it agrees with it. a way for us to do that. It is certainly not intended as a means by which to take a decision-making power away from Committee of the Whole. Quite the contrary. The intention is to give an opportunity for Committee of the Whole to make a decision, to get a recommendation, and then to decide, and which is what I would like to see us do sooner rather than later, because the issue is pressing, as I've said, and one which we need a path forward on, and that is the intention, to give us a recommendation regarding the future of aquatic facilities, whatever that recommendation may be. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Minaj.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lots of good points. I wonder if the opportunity exists that it simply be the Committee of the Whole structure to investigate it further and to talk about it more as a committee. And it's a little sour grapes on my part, but I was asked to push my recommendations for other committees, including a statement on the Aquatic Facility Committee, to a notice of motion, which I did, which won't be on the floor for discussion until the January 12th meeting. I personally support the idea that we need to get going on. This is the biggest ticket item I think I can see in front of us at this time, potentially, if we were to go with it. And I don't believe that it's going to matter that much if it takes another month to get it done right. If that's not very good English, but at least that's my feeling on it. So I started out wanting to support you, Deputy Mayor Charbonneau and others, and now I'm on the side, wavering on the side of procedure, and thinking that I won't support it as it's written right now. Thank you.
Councillor Rich, I think. Okay, go ahead.
It was my experience when I was out campaigning throughout this community that people were had an appetite for a very swift decision as to either rebuild, build new, or stop the program entirely. That was kind of the way I understood it, and I talked to a lot of people about that. My concern about keeping it into the Committee of the Whole is that there won't be room for a whole lot of discussion. There's a lot of other very pressing business that's happening within this community, and what we need to do is give Council an opportunity to look at a very specific question so that we can come up with a specific answer. And I'm more than willing to take whatever decision we make to the public and say this is what we've tried to do. And I, for one, if I'm on that committee, am going to be interacting with every one of you at any opportunity so that I can ensure that I get feedback from you, as opposed to coming here and not really having a broader discussion, if you know what I'm saying. So that's why I'm supportive of it.
I don't want to go on at length of this because I think we're there, but I mean, if you're going to interact with every one of us, then let's do it all together around this table. Let's do it all together and not have to go and have a meeting where some of us won't be there and some of us will be there. And it may be too onerous, Mike. It may be too onerous. These are difficult decisions. This is going to be a very difficult decision, and I think each one of us should have an opportunity to speak to it at every stage. And I think we've had just about enough discussion anyway. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just as a point of order, too, there are our council is 2/3 new, and this is really the first genuine council meeting we've had, because the meeting that we had last Monday was a special meeting called for a very special purpose to receive a couple of reports. I'm finding it difficult that we're trying to improve the learning curve on everybody and revisit some things that perhaps had gotten a little bit lax over the last two terms, because there were a lot of people who'd been on council for a while. Here we have, coming up next on the agenda, a report, a notice of motion from two members of council that they've submitted, where they have a lot of stuff in it, I'll give you that, but there's some ideas about some new committees and new sort of reinventions of existing committees. What we're about to do here basically suggests that, if you try and play by the rules in the way that we're supposed to do things, you got a little bit of a lag perhaps in the time that things get discussed at council, but there's a proper way to do it. I really am struggling with having this added on to a motion because it's exactly the same thing as what we've asked other councillors to present as a notice of motion separate so that it'll get discussed appropriately and we'll have a chance to think about it and collect some information. And I stand behind that, and I agree with the mayor that, Committee of Whole is a good place for this. I also agree that, it's about time we did something. I really do not understand, though, the pressure on us right now to do something now when we have a report coming up next from 2 new councillors who were supposed to be learning how to do this properly. And having this go through now as an add-on to a motion, to me, suggests that, squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I don't think that that's how we've ever done things with our council. And so I'm not doubting or discounting the intent. I'm basically saying, what's the rush? If this would have come through in the same way as the motion that's coming through next on our agenda, that's the way it's supposed to be done here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think we've had some pretty good discussions here. I appreciate everybody's comments, but I think it's time for the question on the amendment now. So as everybody understand, what we'll be voting on will be the amendment to the original motion. Does anybody want it read again? No? Okay then. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? That's defeated. Lost, yeah. That's lost. That's the word here. Back to the main motion then. Any questions or comments to the main motion? All in favor of the main motion? That's carried. Opposed, if any? That's carried. So we move to the next item then, and we have a notice of motion, and I think everybody has a copy of it. Does everybody with your agenda, or do you want me to read it for you? I'll read it. Notice of motion. Whereas the residents of Saugeen Shores are graded, this will be placed on the next agenda. So I'll just read it so that you know what's coming. It's whereas the residents of Saugeen Shores are our greatest resource, and whereas the residents of Saugeen Shores have articulated a strong desire for a more inclusive and open council, and whereas candidates for election who were successful in gaining the support of the residents also articulated a strong desire for a more inclusive and open council. And whereas the creation of new council committees would help to meet the desire for a more inclusive and open council, and whereas the Striking Committee of Council has the jurisdiction to create new committees of council, set their objectives, their composition, and their meeting frequencies, therefore, be it resolved, and then it goes on that council consider including the committees contained in the background report during their deliberation. Be it resolved that the Striking Committee also consider any other committees forwarded to them by members of council prior to the next meeting. That will be on the agenda of Committee of the Whole for the next meeting. So we'll move to bylaws. So the next item on the agenda is a fees and charges bylaw, and that's been moved by Councillor Matheson and seconded by Councillor Mike Myatt, that bylaw 96-2014, being a bylaw to set fees and charges for the provision of services or activities for the town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 15th day of December 2014. Excuse me. So I'll take any, I guess this was a motion to, there's 2 amendments to this one. I have 2 amendments to that one, but I'll take any discussion on this one, and we'll take the amendments as we get to them. Any questions on the main motion? Nothing. Then I have a motion that's been moved by Councillor Malage and seconded by Councillor Rich to amend the fees and charges bylaw 96-2014 to delete the increase of 33 4% applied to those responsible for an NSF check. So I think in terms of, it was a $30 charge and it was going to go to $40 for an NSF check. Okay? Speak to it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I chose, at the last meeting and discussion, I voted against the fees and charges over principle of to when they appear before us and how they were blank. We had a blanket approach to it. I know that staff needs to move forward. This one is the small one. Increasing an NSF fee, or even having one in the first place, is at best a provocative and discriminatory policy against our community's most vulnerable citizens. Community members who are most likely to not have sufficient funds to cover an invoice are penalized not only by their financial institution to an additional tune of the same amount, but by us as well. As presented by our CFO, this is more about housekeeping with our neighbors and their fee amounts, and I am disturbed by that. This is another time of year when our compassion doff, or less fortunate with a hand up instead of a handout, could be so important. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments to this? I have one other motion, so I'll read that one, and then we'll deal with them in the reverse order. Is that one other amending to the main motion? If you want to deal with this one now, then, deal with this amendment. Okay. Does everybody know what we're voting on here? I will read it. Deputy Mayor Huber. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Perhaps Kate, the treasurer, can remind us how many NSF checks we had last year, and the number has been declining from year to year.
Through you, Your Worship, I can't confirm if the number is declining. I don't have those numbers, but the number last year was 61 NSF checks in total.
Any other questions? Then we're voting on this amendment, the amendment to the fees and charges by Law 96/2014 to delete the increase of 33% applied to those responsible for an NSF check. All in favor? Opposed, if any? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try again. All in favor? I might have been counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's 5.
So the amendment carries. And the fee is 30, not 40.
$30. Thank you. The next amendment, then. This is getting complicated here. Again, it's by Councillor Minaj and second by Councillor Rich to amend the fees and charges by Law 96/2014 to delete the proposed increase from 3 to 4% as applied to the water charges section.
It should be the other way around. I'm sorry. I'll have to amend it. It should be 4 to 3.
To amend? No, it's right as written. Thank you. The recommendation, Mr. Mayor, the recommendation was that those fees on the water be increased from the plan that said 3% to 4%. I'm recommending that we delete the requirement to increase it to 4%.
So for clarity, then, it will be 3%.
That's what I'm suggesting, and I'd like to speak to it too, please.
Is that clear? So okay, I guess what you're recommending is that the water rates increase 3% instead of 4%.
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It's all about the financial plan, and I'd like to speak to it.
Okay.
With your permission, then. So on June the 27th, 2011, an approved financial plan was presented and accepted by Council. It was Financial Plans Regulation of Ontario. It's a requirement through a condition of water system license. The original accepted plan was calculated on a 3% inflation per year. I do not believe we've hit 3% at all over that period. And Stan, I would offer that out as my research says no. The revenue streams over-under, so they're over-under numbers from 2010 to 2013. For the first 2 years, they were under by 2.5% on revenue. In 2012, it was plus 13%, and in 2013, it was plus 1.6%. 2014 is projected to be less, so that there's a net difference. The financial plan guidelines follow 9 principles: ongoing public engagement and transparency to build confidence in the plan, an integrated approach to planning among water, wastewater, and stormwater systems. I'm abbreviating these for expediency, Mr. Mayor. Revenues collected for the provision of water and wastewater should ultimately be used to meet the needs of those services, revenue neutral. I think that's the expression that was given to me. Life cycle planning with mid-course corrections is preferable to planning over the short term or no planning at all. But an asset management plan is key input to the development of a financial plan. Point 6, a sustainable level of revenue allows for a reliable service that meets or exceeds environmental protection standards while ensuring sufficient resources for future rehabilitation and replacement needs. 7, ensuring users pay for the services they are provided leads to equitable outcomes and can improve conservation. In general, metering and the use of rates can help ensure users pay for the services received. Financial plans are living documents that require continuous updates and improvement. Improved planning for the future can be achieved by comparing the accuracy of financial projections with the actual results. Financial plans can benefit from close collaboration of various groups, including engineers, accountants, auditors, utility staff, and municipal staff, recommending committees. Long-term financial planning and asset management can have environmental benefits, including finding reduced leakage rates, aging water mains, etc. Following approval of the financial plans, there will be a need to assess the final waste and water rate increases, taking into consideration growth and consumption information. I submit that 2012 to 2013 was a hotter and drier period with lake levels reaching their all-time lowest. Revenues were 3 times higher than in the previous 2 years. In 2014, we endured a heavier than usual snowfall as well as a wetter than normal spring and summer. Early predictions from Kate, our CFO, are lower revenues. There is an interesting relationship between hot, dry, or wet and cool summers. Overall, less garden watering use, and this is clearly seen by the water consumption numbers for July. If we are prepared to increase the cost of water when the revenues are low, are we equally prepared to lower the cost after the revenues exceed expectations? We are asking our good citizens to work with us and conserve water at the same time, realizing their rates will increase anyway to pay for such an important life-giving commodity. When revenues are high, we can use them as a dampening effect against years when they are predictably lower, such as this year. Supplemental assessments reported at $268,000 on November the 10th are by design not budgeted for but intended to offset negative variances in other departments. It is my hope that we can also establish a utility arrears program, as do other communities, a program that targets groups that are enrolled, such as Ontario Works, Ontario Disability Support Program, and low-income residents that are not on social assistance. So, in closing, Mr. Mayor, and then to our council and to all the staff, I would like support for the following. I do not support a mid-course correction of the fees. I believe the 15% over predicted revenues over the past 2 years can act as relief for the need to increase the charges over those recommended by the plan of 3% and 6%. Sewer and water fees are approaching annual amounts of over $1,000 per household. As such, I suggest they no longer resemble the intent of a fees and charges schedule. As discussed, it is my belief that the operations budget, including sewer and water fees and charges, be discussed together and at a meeting held in December in the future. The financial plan guidelines speak to the need for close collaboration of various groups, including engineers, accountants, auditors, utility staff, municipal staff, and probably some members of council if we don't do it as a committee of the whole. I see the need for an ad hoc committee during the 5-year review period. This may be required in 2015 in order for the next plan to be presented and approved in 2016. The plan is a 15-year plan, and it's asking for 5-year change, looks at change. So at this time, I'm asking for the amendment to keep the fee increase to the 3% that's in the plan and not advance it to the 4%. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll start with Councillor Rich.
Through you, Your Worship. Kate, do you think that we need 4% to stay revenue neutral?
Through you, Your Worship, we have not presented our draft operating budgets for water and wastewater just yet. However, staff have reviewed them in detail. We were actually just looking at those earlier today. And with the 4%, applying that compounded to our known revenues in 2013, we are not quite revenue neutral in water, and with the 6% in wastewater, we're not quite either. We are actually budgeting to draw a small amount from the reserves, which is why we came forward with the 4% increase.
As a CAO, from the original request, staff requested.
Deputy Mayor Charbonneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to start by commending Councillor Minaj on bringing amendments to this, which is, in my view, an entirely appropriate way to deal with issues facing Council. With regard to the this motion, I think rather than adjusting or addressing the funds raised for a particular service like water by looking specifically at the fee charged, I think it would be better for us to go to the operating budget and look at the operations of the water treatment system. And if we have concerns about the costs or what the operation is costing or how we could do it better, or look at ways to limit the fee increases to the public, I think that that's the place to address it. Look at the operation, because what we really have here is the result of a bunch of decisions made and the fee necessary to provide the service that Council has directed staff to provide. And to adjust that fee is really making an 11th hour adjustment that's going to affect the bottom line. And we, as you know, as we've just heard, as a council have a collective and individual duty of care to the water treatment system, which we must be very careful to not to breach. Councillor Minaj raises lots of interesting information there, which he should raise again, I think, during the operating budget discussion, and which we can then, as a council, review in more detail that operation. But I think we need to be abundantly careful, extra careful, that decisions that we make here aren't, on this particular issue, are not made without a great deal of consultation with those professionals in charge of this system. So I will not be supporting the amendment as written. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further comments or questions? And I'll call the question on this amendment, the second amendment to the original one. Is everybody clear on what we're voting for? Or want clarification? Maybe that's a better way to say it. Okay, then if not, then all in favor. Opposed? That's defeated or lost. The next item on the agenda is this. Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm getting twisted away from the main one here. Now, so we'll go back to the main motion, which is the bylaw to approve the fees and charges. Questions on this? If not, then all in favor. Opposed? That's carried. So the next item on the bylaw is a subdivision agreement with Pegasus Trails Phase 2, and it's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber and seconded by Councillor Minaj that bylaw 97-2014, being a bylaw to authorize entering into a subdivision with Susan K. Pride, is hereby read a first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 15th day of December 2014. Any questions or comments? If not, then all in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. The next item and then is the bylaw on Ontario Community Infrastructure Funding. And it's been moved by Councillor Dave Mayette and seconded by Councillor Grace that bylaw 98-2014, being a bylaw to authorize a funding agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in the right of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Agriculture, Food and Services, is hereby read a first, a second, and third time, and finally passed and sealed this 15th day of December 2014. Any questions or comments? None, then. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Oops. That's carried. I'm going to eat that thing. The next item is the confirmatory bylaw. It's been moved by Councillor Minaj, seconded by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber, that bylaw 99-2014, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores, is hereby read a first, second, third time, finally passed and sealed this 15th day of December 2014. All in favor? That's carried. It's been moved by Vice Deputy Mayor Huber and seconded by Councillor Minaj that this regular council meeting of December the 15th, 2014 hereby adjourn at 9:32 p.m. All in favor? We're adjourned. Thank you.